All right, Anderson Silva, Jake Paul. This is not going to be good for Anderson Silva. And it's hard for me to say that because I've been watching UFC since 2005, and I watched his reign as it happened. And it was one of the most incredible sports reigns I've ever watched as it happened. I was a little too young to watch Jordan as it happened. I just missed it. I watched Kobe as it happened, and Kobe was, an ice cold killer. But yeah, Anderson Silva, legend for the time that he did what he did. One of the greatest of all time. So when you see him, in a face off against what we call some kid, in a boxing match, you're like, dude, he's gonna get cleaned out. Say whatever you want about Jake Paul. Have we seen him apples to apples fight somebody his size with his youth that's a boxer that's equal in his skill? Not yet. That's true. We haven't seen that. But he's a big guy that trains, has been training, and has good technique and a lot of power. And he has the right mentality. And Anderson Silva leaves stuff wide open. If you see some of his boxing highlights, he's leaving stuff wide open. And he is almost 50 years old. Guys, this is not going to be good. Jake Paul is going to clean him out with a right hook. It just is what it is. The style that Anderson Silva had and has is, similar to that Roy Jones style. And that's a very powerful style, but the one thing you need to pull that off is speed. Dropping your hands, baiting, opponents in, springing out of nowhere and striking. You need speed. And don't forget, Chris Weidman ended Anderson Silva's reign many years ago with a punch. Chris Weidman is a tough dude, a bad dude, but he's a wrestler. And he finished Anderson Silva with a punch many years ago. And it was the same thing. Anderson was kind of doing his, hands down thing, and he got caught. So this is not going to be good for Anderson. It's, unfortunately, it's hard to detach yourself sometimes and see it for what it is because, on the card, they're not saying like a 300,000 mile 1998 model, Anderson Silva. And so you just hear the name and you see him on stage and you're like, oh, dude. And, the weight of what he did carries with him. There he is. If I met him on the street, I'd be like, oh my God, there he is. It's attached to a time of what he did. That can never be taken. But if you put him in the ring now, it's like, it's like putting Michael Jordan against one-on-one against somebody who's, an up-and-comer. Now, they wouldn't need to be the best ever. They could just be somebody that's really good at basketball, that's young, that has their youth. Maybe somebody that's like a NBA prospect, or maybe just, even a college prospect. So, Jake Paul, again, he's not, like if you just said he was just a guy on the street, just like a random person who trains boxing, it's like you wouldn't want to put an almost 50-year-old guy who's not a boxer in the ring. Anderson Silva can't capitalize on what made his game so good. That front kick, his kicks, all the other strikes that you can do in MMA are taken from you. And so the way you compute the fight is infinitely different when you only have your hands. And for an almost 50-year-old, does Anderson Silva look good? Yeah, he's in great shape for a guy that's almost 50. The average person does not want to spar him in boxing, no, but you know, he doesn't. It would be a little more intriguing if Anderson had a style where, like, he kept his hands up and had a guard, but he leaves stuff wide open in his boxing highlights. And you'll watch his boxing highlights, and like in it, it's like there's a fight against Tito, and it's like that doesn't count. Tito was a bad dude back in the day, and he caught a lot of flack through the years, but people either don't know what he actually did, or they're just wanting to poke fun at like his cringy trash talk he does. But as far as a fighter, back in like the early 2000s, mid 2000s, I mean, he was the man, and he was a tough dude. He was a bad dude. But the furthest thing from a boxer, the furthest thing. Amazing wrestling, some of the best ground and pound. Those are not those do not translate. The only thing that translates is how tough these guys are and their ability to stay in a fight and want to stay in a fight. But boxing, it's and they're old. I mean, that does not count. We saw this happen at the end of Roy Jones' career. He ends up getting caught and hanging around too long, and that style he had just, it doesn't work. And you go against somebody that's big and strong that has trained. Again, we're not talking about, has Jake Paul fought boxers yet? That's a whole nother conversation. He hasn't. This is him versus a guy that's almost 50, who we saw get cleaned out with a punch by a wrestler, Chris Weidman, many years ago. By a wrestler. Jake Paul has been training boxing, and they're doing a boxing match. He's going to clean him out. So